So you've brought us some pretty sobering material this week. Details about the tragic shooting at Florida State University back in April 2025.
Yes, it's a difficult report, but important to look at.
Absolutely. And our goal here for everyone listening is really just to dig into this report you shared. We want to try and pull out what's most critical to understanding, what actually happened, who was affected, and the sort of immediate ripple effects.
Exactly. This report gives us that crucial initial snapshot, a first look at a very tough event. By focusing on those key details, we can hopefully get a clearer picture of how it all unfolded.
Right. We're looking at excerpts here, bits that give us a glimpse of a campus, a community really thrown into crisis.
hmm
And just to set the scene a bit, Florida State University in Tallahassee, it's a big place, usually very vibrant. This shooting happened near the student union.
Yeah, and if you know university campus is the student union,
Yeah,
that's usually the absolute heart of student life, right? Always full of energy, people coming and going.
definitely. And the timing here is also pretty stark. Just before noon, the report says around 11:56 a.m. EDT.
Right, when campus would have been, really buzzing, classes happening, students moving between buildings, lunch starting, just a peak time for activity.
Okay, so let's try to piece together how this actually unfolded. The report names the shooter, 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner. He was an FSU student himself.
Yes.
And one of the first details that just jumps out is his connection to law enforcement. He was the stepson of a Leon County sheriff's deputy. What are your sort of initial thoughts on that specific detail?
Well, it immediately brings up several questions, doesn't it? Things like potential access to firearms, maybe the home environment, just a lot of factors that investigators would look into straight away.
And the report mentions the weapons involved, too.
Yes, it indicates Eichner had both a handgun and a shotgun.
Okay. And this is where it gets, well, particularly concerning, I think. The report highlights Eichner had a history involvement with far-right groups, and he was actually expelled from a university debate club because of his extreme political views. Given that context, what potential insights can we maybe draw about his motivations here?
Well, that expulsion, specifically for extreme political views,
Right.
it really suggests a pattern, doesn't it? A pattern of behavior that was considered unacceptable, even in a space, like a debate club, which is designed for pretty robust discussion.
Right.
So when you combine that with the reported links to far-right groups often known for extremist ideologies, it does strongly indicate that his political beliefs probably played a significant role in this.
And then there's that connection back to law enforcement, his stepfather. The report notes there's scrutiny around how he got the weapons. Could he have accessed a service weapon, for instance? What are the key questions investigators would be chasing down there?
They'd be looking very closely at exactly how and when he obtained those firearms.
Yeah.
Were they purchased legally? Did he already own them? Was there any kind of unauthorized access involved, perhaps linked to his stepfather's job? Understanding that chain of custody is absolutely critical. Were any protocols missed, basically?
Yeah, crucial questions. Let's shift focus now, if we can, to the human cost of this. It's just devastating. The report details the deaths of two people, neither of them students.
Right.
Robert Morales, 47, he was a dining services coordinator at FSU, worked there for over 15 years. The report also adds, interestingly, he was the son of a Cuban exile and a former CIA operative. What does it, including details like that, tell us about the impact?
It really underscores how this kind of violence radiates outwards, far beyond just the student population. Robert Morales was clearly a long-term, integral part of that university community. And those biographical details, they help paint a fuller picture of who he was, the depth of the loss for everyone who knew him. It makes it more personal, less abstract.
It really does. And the second person killed was Tiru Chaba. He was a regional vice president with Aramark, the university's dining services provider, I believe.
That's right.
A father of two, and he was just in Tallahassee on business when this happened. How does that detail kind of broaden our understanding?
Well, it's a stark reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
That these tragedies can pull in people who just happen to have a connection to the university, maybe not even part of the daily campus fabric. Mr. Chaba was there for work, just doing his job. It highlights the awful randomness, the unpredictability of this violence, and how it can just intersect with ordinary lives in the most devastating way.
Just awful. The report also mentions 6 other people were injured. There's a graduate student among them, and we're told they're stable, expected to recover, which is, at least some small bit of positive news in all this.
It is definitely welcome news that they're expected to recover. But The fact that 6 people were injured, it points to the scale of the chaos, right? Within that specific location near the student union. And even with a stable condition, each of those individuals, they face a long road, physically and uh, emotionally, too.
Absolutely. So, in the immediate aftermath, the university's response was, well, immediate. Campus-wide lockdown, all classes, events canceled. The report mentions quick coordination between campus police and local law enforcement. Why is that kind of rapid, joined-up response so critical?
Oh, it's absolutely essential. In these active shooter situations, every single second counts. A swift lockdown contains the threat, hopefully prevents more casualties, and that coordination between campus PD and local agencies, it means resources are deployed effectively, there's a unified command, everyone's working together, not duplicating efforts or getting in each other's way. It's vital.
And what about the students? The report touches on the emotional impact. You see words like shock, fear, confusion, but also we saw reports of students supporting each other, using social media, organizing vigils pretty quickly. What does that tell us about how communities react right in the heat of that trauma?
It shows that fundamental human need for connection, doesn't it? Especially when facing something terrifying. People naturally reach out. Social media becomes this channel for sharing information, finding out if people are okay, offering reassurance. And vigils, they provide that physical space for shared grief, for remembering, and for showing solidarity. It's about finding community when things feel like they're falling apart.
Yeah, that solidarity is so important. And it wasn't just internal. The report notes support pouring in from other universities from the wider Tallahassee community, too. What's the significance of that external support for a campus going through this?
That external support is huge. It provides resources, sometimes tangible things like counseling help from elsewhere, but also just that emotional validation. It tells the FSU community, you're not alone in this. There's a whole network out there that cares, that understands, and that can really help bolster them through the long process of healing and recovery.
Okay, let's turn back to the investigation itself. The report is pretty clear that a main focus is the suspect's background and motivations. Specifically, those documented extreme political views we mentioned earlier.
Right.
What kind of investigative avenues would stem directly from that focus?
Investigators would be doing a deep dive, excuse the term, into absolutely everything. His online activity, social media, emails, texts, any writings, manifestos, communications with others. They'd be looking for clues about his radicalization process, if he had specific targets, what exactly tipped him over the edge,
Yeah.
trying to understand the why behind his actions, especially through the lens of those extreme beliefs.
And the report also brings up the context of Florida, right? The scrutiny on firearm access on college campuses there, where gun control is, well, it's a constant debate. How might this specific shooting affect that ongoing discussion in the state?
Events like this, tragically, almost always pour fuel on those existing debates. In Florida, given its political landscape and history with gun legislation discussions, this incident would almost certainly lead to renewed, probably intensified calls for stricter regulations, particularly around access for people with known extremist affiliations or documented behavioral concerns. It forces the issue back into the spotlight.
And the FBI got involved too, which sort of underscores the seriousness. Importantly, though, for people listening, authorities did state there was no immediate ongoing threat after the incident was contained.
Yes, that's crucial.
What's the significance of the FBI stepping in?
FBI involvement usually means the investigation might have wider dimensions. Maybe potential links across state lines, federal laws potentially violated, or the ideological motivation itself might trigger federal interest, like domestic terrorism concerns. Their resources, their expertise, especially in analyzing digital footprints or extremist networks, are invaluable. And that reassurance about no ongoing threat, that's paramount for public safety, allowing people to even begin to process what happened without immediate fear.
Yeah, absolutely critical messaging. The report also outlines responses from leaders. Governor Ron DeSantis offering condolences, pledging state help for FSU. What kind of role does that leadership play right after something like this?
Leadership figures, whether political or university-based, they play a really key role in signaling stability, offering reassurance, showing that the situation is being taken seriously. Their words can help unify the community, make sure resources are flowing where they're needed, and just set a tone for how the community will respond and start to heal.
And similarly, FSU President Richard McCullough's statement condemning the violence, committing to campus safety, supporting everyone affected. What kind of specific actions is a university president usually coordinating in the middle of all this?
Oh, the president is right at the center. They'd be liaising constantly with law enforcement, overseeing the deployment of support services, counseling for students, faculty, staff handling communications with the entire university community, parents, alumni, the media, and likely initiating immediate reviews of all campus safety protocols and procedures. It's a massive coordination effort.
And as we've touched on, this tragedy, it just inevitably brings those broader conversations back to the forefront. Campus safety, mental health services, gun control. The report mentions specific calls for stronger gun laws, especially concerning individuals with extremist views. Why are these conversations always so, well, complex and often pretty contentious?
They're incredibly complex because they touch on really fundamental beliefs, don't they? Beliefs about individual rights, like a Second Amendment, versus collective public safety. Then there's the role of government, differing ideas about what actually causes violence. Is it guns, mental health, ideology, something else? And therefore, what the most effective solutions are. You get deeply held, passionate, and often directly conflicting viewpoints clashing. There are rarely easy answers.
No, definitely not. The report then talks about that difficult path ahead, the path to healing. It acknowledges the huge emotional and psychological toll on the FSU community. It notes things like counseling services being offered, plans for a memorial service. Why are those supports so vital, not just immediately, but long term?
They are absolutely essential. Trauma on this scale affects people deeply and in lasting ways. Counseling offers that professional support both individually and in groups to help people process what they've experienced, manage anxiety, grief. Memorial services, they provide that vital collective space to remember, to honor the victims, to grieve together, and maybe find some sense of shared closure. These are quick fixes. They're crucial components of fostering resilience and long-term well-being for the entire community.
And looking even broader now, this event, sadly, it serves as another stark reminder, doesn't it, of the ongoing challenges universities face trying to keep their communities safe in what seems like an increasingly complex world.
It really does.
What are some of the key challenges universities are grappling with right now in that regard?
Oh, there are many. Identifying potential threats early, which is incredibly difficult. Balancing the need for security measures with maintaining that open, accessible campus environment that universities thrive on. Providing enough mental health support for a large, diverse student body, often with limited resources, and navigating the really complex web of state and federal laws around things like firearms on campus, privacy rights, and threat assessment. It's a constant balancing act.
Yet, despite all that darkness, the report does end on a note emphasizing the community's strength. It talks about unity, resolve at FSU and in Tallahassee, a commitment to honoring the victims, but also to working to prevent this from happening again. What does that kind of response tell us?
It tells us about incredible resilience, I think. It shows a refusal to be defined solely by this tragedy. That focus on unity, on prevention, it reflects a collective determination to learn, to adapt, and to try and build a safer, more supportive environment moving forward. It's a powerful statement in the face of terrible adversity.
So, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, we've walked through the tragic events at FSU, the heartbreaking impact on Robert Morales, Tiru Chaba, the injured, and the entire community. We've looked at the immediate response from the university and law enforcement, and how this has reignited those vital, though difficult, conversations about safety, mental health, and guns in our society.
Exactly. And maybe as a final thought for everyone listening, reflecting on all these different layers we've discussed, the shooter's reported background and extremist views, the specific circumstances of the victims, the security responses, the broader societal debates, thinking about all that. What single element or maybe aspect strikes you personally as the most critical point? The thing we most need to understand or perhaps address moving forward, and why does that particular piece feel so significant to you? It really just highlights how multifaceted these tragedies are and how many different angles there are to consider when we try, however imperfectly, to make sense of them.